It was a quiet afternoon in the heart of New York, but for former President Donald Trump and his wife Melania, things were about to take a dramatic turn. They were making their way through a high-profile event, with cameras flashing and reporters everywhere. Little did they know, a reporter who had made a name for himself by fiercely criticizing them was about to step into their path. The room was tense as Trump and Melania walked down the corridor, a sea of journalists all eager to catch a glimpse of them, get a word in, or ask a question. Among them was one man, an investigative journalist known for his biting commentary against the Trump family. His name was Mark Henson, and his hatred for the Trumps wasn't secret. His articles were filled with sharp criticisms, calling the couple everything from corrupt out of touch with the American people. On this particular day, Mark was ready to make his mark, quite literally. He was determined to confront them, not just to ask questions, but to challenge them in front of a crowd, to force a moment of reckoning. As the Trumps approached the media scrum, Mark saw his opportunity. The tension was palpable. The moment everyone had been waiting for was about to unfold. With the hustle and bustle of cameras clicking, Mark took his chance. He pushed forward, his voice cutting through the noise of the other reporters. "Mr. Trump, Mrs. Trump, can you tell us why you continue to lie to the American public? Why should anyone believe a word that comes out of your mouth?" His question was sharp, aggressive, and direct, designed to provoke a response. The air seemed to freeze for a second. All eyes were on the Trumps, but more importantly, on how they would react. Mark's question wasn't just an inquiry. It was an attack, an accusation. For a brief moment, the crowd fell silent. Even the journalists waiting for their turn to speak stopped in anticipation. Donald Trump's face tightened. You could see the wheels turning in his mind. He had faced criticism and tough questions before, but this was personal. This wasn't just another press conference. This was a confrontation. Melania, ever poised, stood beside her husband. The former First Lady's face remained calm, but her eyes showed the faintest flicker of annoyance. She had always been known for keeping her emotions in check, but even she couldn't hide her discomfort at the hostility Mark was directing at them. Donald Trump, never one to back down from a challenge, stepped forward with an intensity that immediately shifted the energy in the room. He adjusted his tie and, with a steely gaze, addressed Mark directly. "I built a great company. I've been elected as your president. Something you'll never understand," he began, his voice calm but firm. That Trump's words hit hard. He wasn't just offending himself. He was challenging Mark's credibility, calling out the hypocrisy in the journalist's own career. "You make a living off lies, and yet you stand there asking me about truth? It's people like you who have caused a division in this country." Mark's face turned a shade of red, a mix of anger and embarrassment, but he wasn't going to back down that easily. He pushed on, asking, "But what about your scandals? The countless accusations of fraud, the corruption, the mismanagement of your businesses? How do you justify that?" Melania took a step forward, her voice cutting through the tension like a knife. "We've done more for this country than you could ever understand. You're focused on tearing people down instead of asking the tough questions about what's really happening. This is about more than just headlines." The crowd was stunned. Most reporters had expected a traditional back and forth, but instead, they were witnessing something entirely different. A clash of egos, but also an exchange of truth from both sides. Trump and Melania weren't backing down. They were holding their ground. Just as it seemed the confrontation might escalate further, something unexpected happened. A voice broke through the tension. Mark's own cameraman, a man who had worked with him for years. The cameraman spoke up, his voice unusually shaky. "Mark, you need to stop. This is too much." The room went quiet. Everyone turned to look at the cameraman. Was this some kind of joke? Why was he speaking up against his own colleague? But Mark's face shifted. For a brief second, a look awe flickered in his eyes. "What are you talking about?" he asked. The cameraman continued, "I've been working with you for years, and I've watched you become obsessed with tearing people down. You don't care about the truth anymore. You just want a story, a scandal." The reporters in the room were now in shock. Mark, the man who had spent years attacking Trump and his family, was being called out by someone on his own team. The silence in the room was deafening. Mark tried to brush it off. "This is none of your business," he snapped, but his voice lacked the usual conviction. The confrontation had turned from a public attack into something much more personal. As the confrontation wound down, Mark quickly retreated, his camera crew following closely behind. Trump and Melania exchanged a brief, knowing glance, their calmness only serving to emphasize how out of control the situation had become. The reporters, still reeling from what they had witnessed, began to murmur among themselves. Was this the moment that the narrative around Trump and his family would begin to shift? Could Mark, the fierce critic, be losing his grip on the narrative? For Trump and Melania, this wasn't just about defending themselves against a hostile reporter. It was about something bigger. It was about standing their ground, showing their strength, and proving that no matter how many critics they faced, they would never be intimidated as the event ended and the Trumps made their way out. They left behind a room full of reporters who had just witnessed the unexpected, a twist in the tale that no one saw coming. And for Mark, the journalist who had once been so sure of himself, the encounter would remain a haunting reminder of how quickly the tables can turn.